Welcome back to the channel, guys. We are just days away from the Week 2 matchup, Giants versus Bills. And as always, I'm just here to break down my top 5 things that I'm going to be watching for in that ball game. Before I get into that, if you could just leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it and sub to the channel if you haven't already. And also just check out all the content that I'm going to be posting prior to this video and after this video. As you know, I'm going to be attending the Fantannial kickoff party at MetLife Stadium tonight. So that full vlog is going to be up very shortly, either early Saturday morning or later Friday night. Of course, I'll be at the ball game on Sunday, so the vlog and the post-game review will be around shortly after the ball game. I'll try to get it done as fast as I can. Obviously, the traffic getting out of MetLife is kind of crazy. But until then, enjoy the top 5 things I'm going to be looking out for. Leave in the comments what you're going to be watching for. Number 5. Can the offensive line build off a good performance? Against the Dallas Cowboys, all things considered, our offensive line looked pretty good. I mean, they had the tough task of right out of the gate in week 1 having to face one of the more dominant defensive pass rushes in the entire NFL. I mean, guys like I mentioned in the preview video, DeMarcus Lawrence, Leighton Vander Esch, Jalen Smith, they have talent at both the defensive line and then the linebacker position at rushing the passer. So all things considered, the Giants did look very good in week number 1, which is great to see because as a unit altogether, they're relatively new. I mean, obviously Nate Solder and Will Hernandez worked together last season, but guys like John Halapio went down in week number 2 with that injury. Then you got Zeitler and Remmers, who obviously just joined the team this offseason. So collectively, as a unit, they are relatively new working together. So it was definitely good to see them mesh pretty well in a real game. You know, not getting a lot of time in preseason together, obviously, but here there in week number 1, they did look relatively good. But now the question is, in week number 2, can they improve off of this performance? I mean, as I said, they played against Dallas, who has a dominant pass rush, and they only let up 1 sack, which cannot be understated how impressive that is. But now moving on to Buffalo, who also has some pretty decent pass rushers. Probably not the caliber of Dallas. That's why I'd love to see an improved performance here. I mean, we're going to be facing guys with veteran Jerry Hughes, who actually had 1.5 sacks last week against the Jets. But now the question is, can the Giants improve and continue that success? Now, Dallas, as I mentioned, dominant pass rush, only let up 1 sack. But this team, the Buffalo Bills, actually had 4 sacks last week against the Jets. Leading the way is their veteran Jerry Hughes, who had 1.5. And, you know, it's been talked about, it's well known, Eli Manning needs a clean pocket. He needs time to go through his progression. His nickname is Easy-E, but he can definitely get discouraged and feel the pressure at times. So it's going to be crucial that we give him time in order for him to be successful. Obviously, a lot of the pressure and a lot of the hits that Eli took last week against Dallas was when he was rolling out of the pocket, and I'm going to get into the play calling much later in the video. But obviously a game plan here is Eli needs time. We need to protect him with the O-line. I would love to see him just stay in the pocket and be the quarterback that we know he is. He's a pocket passing quarterback. And that's the key to victory for the Giants. Eli needs time to get the ball to his receivers. And this is even more crucial, especially now considering Sterling Shepard is in that concussion protocol. He is doubtful for Sunday. And even this past practice, Cody Latimer wasn't able to practice either. So those are 2 guys along the starting rotation of wide receivers that kind of their game time decision, I guess. I mean, Sterling Shepard more so not going to be playing. Latimer, there's not too much information yet. So outside of them, I mean, Evan Ingram looked very good in week 1, and of course there's always Saquon Barkley, but if we're going to have younger receivers on the field like the newly signed TJ Jones, or who knows who the Giants are going to have out there, Eli's going to need time to make sure that they're open. With pass rushers like the guy I mentioned earlier, Jerry Hughes, and arguably one of the most talented players coming out of this past draft, Ed Oliver, I'm definitely going to be keeping an eye on whether or not our offensive line can hold up for the long haul in this ball game. Number 4, applying pressure on the quarterback. Last week against the Dallas Cowboys, the Giants generated literally 0 pressure on the quarterback. Dak Prescott looked comfortable all game, Very few times was he ever disrupted in his dropbacks. And even the few times that he easily was able to roll out of the pocket and either take off with his legs or beat us downfield with his arm. Now, I will say we obviously faced a premier offensive line. The Dallas Cowboys have literally built a brick wall on that O-line, and it was clear that we weren't able to penetrate. Especially with the return of Travis Frederick, that solidified the line even further. But with that being said, it was an absolutely miserable performance by all involved in the pass rush. I did give credit in that review video to the D-line and members of the defense for having a pretty decent run-stopping game, but we need guys like B.J. Hill, Dalvin Tomlinson, Dexter Lawrence. They need to impose their will against the much less talented Buffalo Bills offensive line. Beyond the D-line, we need our linebackers to step up and get involved in the pass rush as well. As I mentioned in my news video yesterday, we have some injuries in our outside linebacker room. Kareem Martin has been placed on IR. It is return IR, so he could potentially be back. But as far as this game against the Bills, he's obviously going to be a non-factor. And also, offseason signee Marcus Golden was limited in practice on Thursday, but he has been a full participant for the remainder of the week, so he will most likely be back in the saddle for this ball game against the Bills. But the Giants were able to sign some depth due to these injuries that occurred, and they decided to sign ex-Steeler preseason standout Tazar Skipper. Now, also in the video, I mentioned that he led all defenders during preseason in sacks. He totaled 5, but inevitably he was cut by the Steelers. His exact role this Sunday, not entirely sure. I mean, it's easier to learn a defensive playbook, I guess, because really you just need to learn your own assignments. But at this point, who really knows? I mean, I hope to see him. Hopefully he can add something to our pass rush. He obviously has some skills, and with the injuries to Kareem Martin mainly, and maybe Marcus Golden might not be full gear in the ball game because he had a slow week. So who knows? Hopefully he can add something to our defense. And of course, I would be a fool not to mention the Giants draft pick, O'Shane Ximines, when it comes to pass rush. He looked very good in preseason as well, getting to the quarterback. I'm definitely expecting him to have a bigger role in this ballgame because of those injuries. So definitely keep an eye out for the X-Man when he is on the field. As a unit, if we want to better our chances at winning this ballgame, we need to get to Josh Allen. We need to put pressure on the quarterback, but of course with Josh Allen, as much as he's not afraid to force the ball deep downfield and use his big arm, he's also not afraid to escape the pocket and take off. Using his legs is a big part of his game, which is a perfect segue into number 3, containing Josh Allen and the rushing attack. Obviously, last week the Giants looked very capable of stuffing the rush and slowing down Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard. How much stock can you really put into that performance is a little bit up in the air at this point. I mean, it was obviously Zeke's first game back after the holdout, after missing all of camp, all of preseason. He was hanging out in his luxurious Cabo vacation spot. So I'm looking for a good performance in week 2 from this Giants defense before I label them a dominant run-stuffing team. The Bills have a very underrated rushing attack. After cutting LaShawn McCoy, it just further shows the confidence that they have in their young and veteran running back group. Someone I was very high on coming into this year's draft was the running back for the Bills, Devin Singletary. Now, this kid is a dual threat when it comes to the running back position. He can catch the ball, he can run with the ball. He's a very talented kid, and he put that on full display in week number 1. He had 70 rushing yards on just 4 attempts, and then added 28 receiving yards on 5 receptions. Obviously, a very good opening game for him from a guy that's not really as heavily touted as, a Josh Jacobs was, who went in the first round. Of course, the Bills have some serious power in their backfield as the fountain of youth, Frank Gore, is rushing the football for them this year. But beyond the running back position, as I already mentioned, facing a quarterback this week, as we did last week, who's not afraid to use his legs to get beyond those sticks and take off when necessary. It is going to be crucial if the Giants want to win this ball game to not only put pressure on Josh Allen, but also be able to contain him and keep him in arm's reach. As we saw last week, especially on third down, when Dak Prescott was in trouble, he was able to easily escape the pocket and get the first down. We cannot allow this to happen this week against the Bills if we want any chance whatsoever at winning. So this week against the Bills, I will absolutely be keying in on whether or not our defense is able to, 1, stuff the rush once again, and 2, contain Josh Allen if and when he decides that he wants to scramble for the first down. It's definitely one of our big things we need to shut down if we want to win this ball game. Number 2, optimizing Saquon Barkley and improving the play calling. Perhaps the biggest thing coming out of week 1 for the Giants was how absolutely atrocious the play calling was from Coach Shermer. Between the endless amounts of screen passes, dump-offs, checkdowns, and most importantly, the complete underutilization of the best running back in football. Now, when it comes to play calling, early in the ball game, we were moving the ball very, very well, mainly on our opening drive, and obviously a lot of those yards came from Saquon Barkley, who had that huge 50-yard rush. But after our opening drive, it almost looked like there was a different team on the field. Now, when the Giants are succeeding, Eli is pushing the pressure downfield. He is throwing the ball beyond the sticks, and that's just not something that we did whatsoever in week number 1. For much of the ball game, our offense was infuriating to watch. Before the play even developed, we already knew it was going to be a quick little pass behind the line of scrimmage, something short over the middle. Absolutely, not only was it infuriating, it was just plain not entertaining. Boring football. My biggest point coming out of week 1 was we're already down 25. I get it. The Cowboys are playing prevent defense. We're not going to get anything too deep, especially over the middle. Or they're going to give us the middle, but nothing along the sidelines, obviously. So what difference does it make? Just heave it up, see what happens. Give your receivers a chance to make a play. When you're down 25, it can't get much worse. So who cares if you throw an interception? It was clear that no chances were taken last week. It was a very conservative, underwhelming, and to be honest, embarrassing performance. Now, once again, we'll be facing a secondary that has quite a few studs out there, quite a few standouts that we're going to have to watch out for. First of all, being Jordan Poyer, who's coming off back-to-back seasons with at least 4 interceptions. Tre'Davious White, and always dangerous Micah Hyde. So now, Buffalo has built a pretty fierce secondary here, but I expect in week number 2 for the Giants to exploit them and take advantage of more opportunities as the ball game goes on. Beyond just the Bills guys in the secondary, they have linebackers that are more than capable of dropping back into pass coverage as well. Tremaine Edmonds is a great example of this. 2 interceptions last season, but regardless of that fact, I truly hope the Giants have a better game plan that involves passes beyond 5 yards, because we showed last week that we are able to move the ball downfield. The one that comes to mind is the catch that Cody Latimer made along the sideline. It was actually one-handed. Beautiful play, and that's my point. Just give your receivers a chance to make a play. We have a lot of talent out there. Let them show it. But if we do decide to run a similar, more conservative offensive style this week once again, let's hope the execution is a little bit smoother. They have a week under their belt of running these plays and another week of practice. I'm just looking for improvements. But obviously, all of that completely aside, the most important portion of our offense that we need to focus on this week is getting the ball to Saquon Barkley. Now, if you watched any of the ball game, or if you only checked out the post-game box score, then you might have assumed that Saquon had a great game. You look 120 yards, you would assume that, he maybe had 20 carries, had a very respectable 6 yards per carry there. But then you dig deeper and you realize he only carried the ball 11 times. 120 yards on 11 carries, 10.9 yards per carry average. That is insane. It got to the point last week where I legitimately thought Saquon was injured. He was on the field, but we just weren't giving him the ball whatsoever. I mean, periodically throughout the game, we were trying to get him involved in the passing game, but kind of to no avail for the most part, because again, we're throwing him the ball 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage, and although he is dominant and can juke you out of your shoes, eventually a defense is going to react and send people to the ball carrier. I mean, it's impossible to escape 3 tacklers every single time. Saquon legitimately looked like he was on pace for a record-setting day. But as I said, the rush was just completely abandoned for some reason. Now, I understand when you're playing from behind, you need to pick up chunk yardage and, throw the ball downfield so you can get back into the game and score quickly. But when you're throwing the ball at the line of scrimmage or behind the line of scrimmage, what's the difference between that and giving the ball to a guy that is averaging more than a first down every single time the ball's in his hands? When you got a guy dominating a defense, as I said, averaging 10.9 yards per carry, you feed him until the defense proves that they can stop him. Saquon might have gone for 250 if we utilized him more in week number 1. Now, it's beyond ridiculous that the Giants didn't take this approach, and it clearly hampered our offense as we only scored 17 points. So it goes without saying, in the home opener against the Bills, I'm expecting a huge game from Saquon Barkley, and I'm looking for him to be the main attraction of our offense. I expect him to be featured much more prominently this week, and quite frankly, we need that to happen to come out of our home opener with a win. And number 1, can our secondary improve? Well, it certainly can't get any worse. As we know, last week, Dak Prescott absolutely shredded up our defense for over 400 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and as it's been touted all week, that perfect passer rating. Actually, 2 quarterbacks with a perfect passer rating in week 1. One being Dak Prescott and the other being Lamar Jackson. Now, the real question is whose secondary is worse, ours or the Miami Dolphins, but I'm not going to go there. We're not that bad. Now we're on to Buffalo, who has a very interesting combination of young receivers and very talented veteran receivers. Guys like Cole Beasley, who's now on the Bills, and the name Cole Beasley is obviously very familiar in Giants Nation because of all the damage he's done against us in the past when he was playing for the Cowboys. But beyond just wide receivers, as I mentioned, they have a very dangerous dual threat running back in Devin Singletary. But then another guy that is on the team that many may forget about is TJ Yeldon, who's also very talented in that dual running back aspect. But even more important, in the past and even last week, the Giants have displayed the inability and all the struggles of guarding tight ends. Now, last week it was Jarwin and Witten. This week, Buffalo has a very underrated and diverse group of tight ends. First of all, they have a guy like Tyler Kroft, who was actually limited in practice all week, so I'm not sure if we're going to see him in this ball game. But then they have 2 rookies, Tommy Sweeney and Dawson Knox, who I heavily suggest that you do not sleep on. Last week, the combination of poor communication, poor execution, and perhaps inexperienced players being in the ballgame led to, well, what Jabril Peppers explained as an ass-kicking against the Dallas Cowboys. Obviously, I have my opinions on the secondary and our pass coverage team as a whole, and I made those very clear in the post-game review. Predominantly speaking about guys like Antonio Hamilton, but DeAndre Baker, Bethea, Peppers, and even at times Jonas just looked dreadful. Now, since that game occurred, there has been a lot of film review and everything like that on Twitter, and one of the best that I saw was from former Giant Jeff Schwartz, who broke down the first touchdown to Jarwin. So now it appeared that the Giants had a nickel defense in effect, and when everyone else dropped back, Bethea bit on the play action, leaving his zone completely empty. And at the same time, as I mentioned in the review video, Tay Davis actually bit on it as well. So now the middle, all the way to the deep zone, is completely wide open for Jarwin, who takes it in for the touchdown. So now that's where I get into the combination of perhaps poor communication between young and veteran players that will improve over time. I said it once, I'll say it 1,000 times. When you mix veterans and rookies, there is going to be a period of time where it's It's going to be a struggle. It's going to take time to get the communication down, to get that rapport down with your teammates, but over time, I think it will improve. Now, Pat Shurmur in a post-game press conference mentioned that there's going to be some changes made to the secondary. Now, I can only hope he's speaking about a guy I've been high on, well, since my very first video at the beginning of this preseason, Corey Ballentine. Now, I got into this in the post game that I thought it was absolutely ridiculous that he was relegated to kick return and special teams, and he's literally on a knee on the sideline while our defense is getting shredded apart. So Ballentine, as you know, probably one of our best looking men in the secondary coming out of preseason. So I really hope he's a more intricate part of our defense this week, and I hope he sees a lot more snaps than he did in week 1, especially before things get out of hand like it did last week. Last week, Josh Allen actually threw 2 interceptions and nearly had a third if it wasn't taken away by a penalty. Allen is obviously a quarterback with a lot of physical traits. He's not afraid to take off, as I already mentioned, and he has a literal cannon attached to his throwing shoulder. He's not afraid to air it out downfield, and with speedy receivers like Beasley, John Brown, and Zay Jones, he has plenty of arm to get it to them. We just need to focus on communicating and staying focused on defense, because one lapse in coverage could result in a huge play downfield. As I mentioned, the big arm. I just hope that we reviewed the film, got better acquainted as a group, and show a better performance in week number 2. So this is without question the number one thing that I'm going to be personally watching for in this week 2 matchup. I mean, the offense can come along all at once, but if we're continuously allowing teams to just shred us with the pass, it doesn't matter how many points we score, they're going to outscore us every single time. So I'm looking for vast improvements in week number 2 from all the members of our secondary. And that's all I got for you guys at this point. As I mentioned at the top of this video, be on the lookout for both of my vlogs coming out this weekend. One for the Fantennial, whatever that means, kickoff party at MetLife Stadium. I'm going to be vlogging that entire experience, and then also the game day against the Bills Mafia. Really hope I can get a shot of someone jumping through a flaming table. That would be great for the vlog, but whatever I capture, I'll make sure to share it with you guys. As always, the preview of the game and the post-game review will be coming at you as well. But that's all. Let's just hope for a brighter week 2, and I'll see you guys in the next one.